Yeah, so is the slide visible?
Yeah, the slide is visible.
Okay. Yeah. So once again, thank you for inviting me to give a talk. So my talk is mostly on cache aided systems. So how by allocating some amount of memory at your device, we can reduce the transmission rate. That is the idea of the talk. Um, So please feel free to ask. Before I start, I want to make a comment. I would like to keep it as an interactive session. So whenever you have any doubt or any concerns, please feel free to raise your hand, or you can just interrupt me and then ask your question. Uh, so that way it will be a two-way communication. As faculties, we know it is always good to have interaction while teaching in a class, and it is very difficult to get that interaction in an online mode. So I expect your support and your cooperation in this regard. So please feel free to um, ask any questions, okay, related to the talk at any point in between. There is no need to wait till the end or till I stop speaking in all. So as the title suggests, so the talk is more about how cache will aid in content delivery applications. So this is a relatively new but not very brand new area of research. But it has interesting potential future directions, as well as a lot of scope for us to continue and get contribute more research in this area. So the primary motivation or aim in this talk is to introduce you to this area, get yourself familiar with the few of the research topics, and then maybe we will, towards the end of the talk, we will have a small discussion on what all things we can possibly do. So this is one of my favorite areas. I have been working in this topic for maybe 3 or 4 years, and uh, there are other interesting areas also. Maybe in the last maybe 5 minutes or so, we can have some more future directions in which uh, I, I, I mean, I do current research. So without further any like delay, we will get on to this topic. And once more, I want to remind you, I encourage questions. So please feel free to ask at any point. So what is the importance, or why are we doing caching? So in this new world, we know that there is a lot of focus happening upon in content delivery. For example, all of us watch videos in our mobile. Okay, maybe in the evening, what we do is we'll go back and maybe watch a couple of videos or movies through Netflix, or maybe using Amazon Prime, etc. So the amount of data that is flowing through the network, particularly the video, has been exponentially rising. Okay, this is not just in social media, but in all these devices. Now we know that we are living in a world of OTT releases, etc. So the amount of this data or the video in particular that is flowing through the network is very, very huge, and therefore this is actually heading to a very good bandwidth constraint, or not, I mean, very competitive bandwidth constraint to our service providers. So what is the focus of this talk is to how we can reduce this transmission rates or reduce the need of bandwidth by caching. So what do I mean by caching? You can allocate some memory. It's a very simple technology. You can allocate some memory in your device where you can preload the contents or prefetch the contents, or we can place the contents in advance, so that when the actual user is demanding those contents, you will be able to deliver it at a faster rate. So it is very simple idea, and it's a very well studied idea in the beginning, but now we are applying little bit coding techniques to make it even better. So that is the focus of the talk. One of the most important observations why caching is required is due to this highlighted point, that there is a high temporal traffic variability. What is this is very very simple terms is that, is there any question? Yeah. So, so what it means in very simple terms is that you, all of us tend to have like relax more, or maybe find recreation time more towards the evening of the day. Okay, maybe around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, etc. That is when we are relatively free. And there is sometimes, like currently, I think when you are listening to this talk, your attention is focused in this particular talk, or when you are doing work, you'll not be in a mood to listen or watch videos, etc. So there is a temporal variance. What do I mean by temporal variance? There is a variance across time. There are peak times in your, as far as your video demands are concerned. There are like off-peak hours where there is not much demand. So what caching or what this technology offers is that you will use the off-peak hours to actually load some content into the particular user's device, and then during the peak hours, make use of these contents to reduce your actual transmission rate. This is the essence of the idea. So in a way, you are actually trading memory, which is the amount of files or amount of videos that you can store in your device a priori, with the rate that is required when you are actually demanding it. So there is a rate. Yeah, there is a rate versus memory trade-off, which is what we are focusing on, which is the idea and behind this talk, behind the next 1 hour, how I will tell you how we can trade off rate with memory size. So let us understand this problem by developing a system model. So this is how every research works. So we have a problem at hand. Now we want to develop a system model, so through which we can analyze the system, get some bounds, get some rate expressions, get more concrete quantitative results. So as we go into the system model, you can observe that we are actually alienating many practical limitations, but we will bring those together towards the end of the talk as potential possibilities of future directions, actual implementation challenges, etc. But in the system model, we are going down to a very, very similar system model so that we can get a handle on what is the amount of rate that is required. So the system model is fairly simple. You have a central server. Okay, so the central server can be a web server which has a collection of movies. So it can be n number of movies. So here n is some arbitrary number, and it is connected to an arbitrary number of users. So we mentioned it as k users, and each user has an associated cache with it. So I will have a cache, you will have a cache, and every user will have an associated cache. So total number of caches is, so total number of users is k, and each user will have caches. So there are k caches, and we assume that the cache size is m. That is, it has a normalized size of m. So what is this? Sorry. Yeah, what is this m means is that it can store m of amount of bits. So each file, we also make one assumption that there are n files, but each file is say f bits of size. So f can be a large number. Okay, typically it will be a huge number. So many bits will be there in every video file. So this f can be a huge number, and we assume that m of bits can be stored. One more thing that we make an assumption is that there is no communication possible between the users. So the only communication that happens is between server and to the users through a broadcast link. So this is the basic setting. Under this setting, the question is how we can make utilize of this caches, or how we can store m of bits so that your delivery rate will be reduced. So there is one important thing to notice. As I mentioned to you before, there is something called as temporal variability. So temporal variability means your demand, or what you demand, will be in the evening, but what you store, or the server will be able to store during the daytime. Okay, and then you will be demanding at the evening. So one thing that you have to clearly observe is that the server doesn't have any clue about what you are going to demand. Okay, at least that is the assumption that we are proceeding. Later on, we can have some file popularity, probability, etc. But initially, we will assume that the server doesn't have any knowledge regarding what you are going to demand. So I will be able to demand any file which is in the server. So one day I will be watching maybe one particular movie, and another day I might be watching another movie. It can be any particular file. So there is no knowledge about the server during the placement phase, what you are going to demand. So there are two phases clearly. One is called as the placement or the prefetching phase. That is when the server actually goes and stores the content in your cache. That happens during off-peak hours. And the only limitation during that time is that your memory size, how much memory each of you are allocating for storage purposes. Then there is the delivery phase. So what happens in the delivery phase is that the users start demanding the files. So the demands of the users are revealed to the server. At that time, the server has to start some transmissions and deliver the demanded files to the users. During this time, however, since a lot of users are putting their demands, the network is assumed to be congested, and we want to reduce the amount of rate that is required by the server to deliver the demand satisfactorily. So this is the overall essence of the problem. And one more thing is that so there are two phases. So clearly there are two stages in which you can optimize. One is how you fill the cache and how you deliver the demands. So both of these are important, and we will see in the next 1 hour how these things are how these things matter. So I hope the problem is clear, and at least this is very simple words. You are able to see what is our target. So let us see what we are going to do. So yeah, so the target again is to find an optimal caching scheme. So optimal means you want to reduce the delivery rate as much as possible for a given n, k, and m. So as I mentioned, we are making certain assumptions. There are certain assumptions. One assumption is that all of you are able to give up a size m. Okay, so we assume that the cache sizes allocated by every user is of certain size m. Another second assumption that we are making is that all the files are of size f bits. And we will also make one more assumption for like getting an easy handle on Max. We will make an assumption that the number of files is far greater than the number of users. So that assumption is also we are making. Yeah. So what is the main point about this caching, or why it is now becoming prominent, is that because of this particular reason, caching gain is not local, it is global, and this global caching gain can be obtained by using coding techniques. So what do I mean by not local? Obviously, if I cache some content in my memory, I will get the benefit out of it. That is a clear-cut non-fact, okay, because the server need not send me that part of the file to me. But with coding techniques, what we can achieve is that we can design transmissions by looking at the caches contents in other users also. So the caches are filled in such a way that the transmissions can be in a multicast way, so that each transmission will be benefiting more than one user. So if you design the caches properly, we can see that you will obtain a global caching gain. So what do I mean by global caching gain? You will get some benefit out of cached contents in other users. Even though there is no direct communication between users, you can still see that you will get some benefit from the cached contents which are cached at other users. So that is one interesting observation, which is very what you call it, is not at all intuitive. Okay, I have some cache and the server is sending some data to me. How will I benefit if somebody else stores some other files? So that is what we are going to see, how we can benefit. We'll see through some examples. The more general expression is slightly involved, but my aim is to make yourself motivated enough to go and read the full paper and understand it clearly. So this is one very important point, so that you will be able to benefit from the cache contents of other users also. Another thing is that statistically independent users, we feel that okay, there is no point in looking at the cache's contents. It can be same as well. So what we show is that storing the same content in multiple users is actually not beneficial. It is better to use different contents in different caches, and that will be more beneficial overall. So that is one more point that we will see. And one more point that we will interestingly see is that all these features or all these gains that I am talking about, that will actually scale very well with K. So as K increases, as the number of users increases, the importance or the relevance become more and more prominent, which makes it a very, very interesting and potentially something that we should really pursue and get it implemented. So my talk will mainly focus on these two classical papers, and towards the end I will direct you to different directions, potential directions. So the first paper is about centralized caching. So here the difference is that the central server is actually supervising the caching process. So it knows all the details, like who is going to take part, who I am serving. Okay, so there is he knows the exact number of users that it is going to serve. So it also knows how much memory each user has allocated. So it can carefully do all the necessary things during the prefetching phase itself, and it can suitably fill the caches. There is a second technique called as decentralized prefetching, in which the central server really does not have any idea. And this is more like a practical setting in a bigger network. So what happens is that there is no guarantee that every day I will be watching a movie, right? So I will sometimes do, sometimes I will not watch, sometimes I will watch, etc. So in large networks, there is no guarantee for the central server. Okay, this person might participate today, or this person may not participate today. So the exact knowledge of the number of users is not known during this decentralized case. So in under that setting, what can we do? So what we do is that we will ask the caches to randomly just store the content. Okay, it is not like it is not having any direction, just randomly fill it up with some portion of the files, and then we will see that even such random filling also will aid you in reducing the rate in an effective manner. So once more, my focus and my aim is to make yourself understand these two papers, and then we will go and see what possible directions this is extended. So this came in a little bit for 2014, but even now this is being widely used, and a lot of research is being done in this areas. So every conference or every conference in communication or information theory, you will see at least 2-3 sessions on caching. Let's start to understand the centralized prefetching. So I would like to present everything using examples, so that everybody will understand, and these are very simple ideas. But the importance is that these are all scalable. Okay, how the scaling is done, we will see in some cases, but in general case, you will have to go and read the paper. So let us consider a very simple setting. So you have two files. So let us name those files x1 and x2. Okay, and there are two. So there are two files. There are two users. Okay, say 1 and 2, and there are two caches, cache 1 and cache 2. So observe that the cache size is mentioned to be m equal to 1. If the cache size is 1, that means it can store f bits. So there are total 2f bits with the server, and out of this you can store f bits at each cache. So let us look what we can do. What we can do is we will split the file into two parts. So each file is split into two parts here. So earlier it was x1 and x2. Now I am splitting it into two parts, x11 and x12. And the second file also I am splitting it into x21 and x22. Now each of these files will be of size f by 2. Now what I can do is I can, since the cache size is assumed to be f, I can put two portions into each cache. So let us see what we can do. One thing that we can do is we can take the first part of each file and put it in the cache. So in this cache 1, I am putting x11, x21. In the cache 2 also I am putting x11 and x21. Now let us see. That now the demands. So this is the caching phase is done. So this is how I loaded the cache. Now what happens is during the delivery phase, each of these users will start demanding a file. So let us assume that both the users demanded the file x1. So under this setting, for x1 there are two parts, x11 and x12. So what does the server need to transmit? It's a very simple question. What does the server need to transmit? It looks at the caches. Inside the cache x11 is already there. Inside this cache x11 is already there. So what it needs to transmit is simple. It just needs to transmit the second portion, that is x12. So it will be able to transmit x12. So what is the amount of bits that it has to transmit? It has to transmit f by 2. Remember that x12 is f by 2 bits, and everything in caching we normalize it with capital F. So that is the number of bits. So we call the rate as 1 by 2. So here we observe that the rate is 1 by 2. So 1 by 2 means yeah. So originally, if you had to deliver a file of size f, now you need to deliver only a file of size f by 2. So this is very easy, very straightforward. Let us look at one more case. So what happens when you when the users demand x1 and x2? So now when I demand x1 and x2, this user 1 has x11, so it needs x12, and user 2 has x21, so it needs x22. So what the server can do is it can transmit x12 first. Okay, that will satisfy user 1. Then it can transmit x22. It will satisfy user 2. So it needs to transmit twice, each of f by 2 bits. So total will be f by 2 plus f by 2 will be f, and therefore your rate is 1. So what you can observe is that as your demand changes, the number of transmissions required also changes. So this is a common occurrence because there are some demands for which the number of transmissions will be less. There are some demands for which the number of transmissions will be more. So there are two parameters or two metrics that we will use to study about the rate. One is what is the average rate. So what is the average rate across all possible demands? So you can have any demand. So here the total number of demands possible is 4 actually, because each user can demand any of the two files. So you have 2 into 2, 4 possibilities. And under that setting, what is the average rate that is required? So that is one metric that we use. Another metric that we use, or another more easier metric that we use, is called as the worst case scenario. So what do you mean? What do I mean by worst case is that under the what is the maximum rate that the server has to support? Okay, among all the possible demands that the users can demand, which demand will give you the worst case rate, and how can I minimize that worst case rate? So that is the one of the metric that we commonly use. So once I minimize the worst case rate, I know what is the rate or what is the worst case scenario that I have to support so that all the users are satisfied without any error or anything like that. So let us look at an alternative strategy. So here what I have done is I have changed the cache contents. So earlier the cache contents were same, x11 and x21. Here also it was x1 and x21. But now I have changed the cache contents. Any question, anybody? Okay, maybe I'll pause after maybe 2 more minutes. I've changed the cache contents. I've changed it to x11, x21, and x12, x22. So all the cache contents are essentially different. So it is x11, x21 in cache 1, x12, x22 in cache 2. Now let us look at this demand, x11 and x11. Once more, both the users are demanding x1. So what cache 1 requires is x12. What cache 2 requires is x11. So how many transmissions do I require? That is the question involved. So what cache 1 requires is x12. What cache 2 requires is x11. How many transmissions do you think is required? Any suggestions, anybody? It's a simple question.
Two transmissions, sir.
Yeah, so 2 is a possibly good answer. One is first you satisfy user 1 and second you satisfy user 2. But here we can do something slightly intelligent. Let us transmit something like this, x12 plus x11. Okay, here plus means binary, so it is basically an XOR operation. So if I do something like this, my claim is I can still be able to satisfy both the users. So can somebody tell me how it is done? It's very simple.
Transmit both of them and XOR it with x11, and in catch 1, XOR with catch 2.
Your voice is slightly not clear. If somebody is trying to tell, can you speak
Transmit
up a little?
both of them, and at the catch 1, XOR with XOR 1, and at
Yeah.
catch 2.
So I think the idea is very simple. So you have this transmission, but you look at user 1. User 1 already has x11 in its cache. So you can take this x11 and subtract it out, or basically you can do one more XOR operation, because subtraction in binary is again XOR. Then you can recover x12 from this transmission. Similarly, what you can do is, here this second user has x12 in its transmission, sorry, x12 in its cache. So it can again do an XOR operation and get x11. So not that by using XOR operation you had f by 2 XOR f by 2. So f by 2 bits XOR with f by 2 bits, you will again be ending up with f by 2 bits only. So your rate remains 1 by 2. So this was same. So this x1 demand, even in the earlier case also the same rate, you obtain 1 by 2. So there is nothing new about that. So no advantage actually, to be speaking, except that you have to do maybe one more decoding operation at your receivers. Okay, so that is there. Okay, maybe we are at a disadvantage by doing this. But what is crucial and what is interesting is, let us consider the new demand x1 and x2. So now, earlier in the original case, you had to transmit f bits to satisfy that. You need to make 2 transmissions. But now I think that at least few of you can clearly come up with what to transmit, so that both the users are transmitted, both the users are satisfied. So what do you think I will transmit? So basically I will see what this user needs. So this user needs x12. What this user needs is now x21, and I will XOR x12 and x21 and then transmit. So even under this setting, okay, which earlier resulted in a rate of 1 by 1, now we are able to get a rate of 1 by 2. Now, some people.
Dr. Arnav, sorry
Yeah,
to
please.
interrupt. There are some comments. First, by the chat box, you can access it. I mean, from Vijay Selvan. So she's writing that sharing caches between them. So Vijay, if you're there, you can ask directly, unmuting yourself. And Smith also has written something, x12 plus x21.
Yeah, I think he has written it correctly. So that is what I have in my slide also. Thank you, Smith. Yeah, I think Smith was trying to speak something, but I couldn't hear it clearly. But I think he has got the overall idea correctly. Good.
Okay.
And Vijay, please feel free to ask directly. I don't have any problem with that. Okay. Anyway, thanks for keeping the session interacting. Yeah, Kundal, any other points?
No, only 2 questions so far. I mean, yeah, if you get any questions, I'll inform you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. No problem. Please feel free to interrupt. No problem. So I hope everything. So we have not dwelled anything. I'm going through the basics only, but I think you're getting the idea. So yeah. So the important thing is rate is now only 1 by 2. Now what people suddenly will think is that, okay, you reduce the rate from 1 to 1 by 2. What is is it a very big thing? Yeah, it is a significant thing, because you're looking at a rate which is actually reducing from f to f by 2. Now this f can be like 1 GB, 1.4 GB, 2 GB files. Okay, so reducing from f to f by 2 is significant. There is a lot of reduction that has happened. It is not reduction from 1 bit to 1 by 2 or whatever it is. It is not a reduction by maybe 2 bits to 1 bit. You are reducing from f to f by 2, and this f can be a large number. Typically it will be in GBs, etc. So there is a significant amount of reduction that is really happening if you are doing caching, and this is a very simple example, and you can see the advantages clearly. So I have put these 2 types of caching. So what is x11, x21, and x11, x21 here. So here the same cache is being stored at the different users, and here the different caches are being stored at different users. And I have, in this table, I have shown you all possible scenarios of demands. So I mentioned earlier there are 4 possibilities in the demands. That is x1, x1 being demanded at both users, x1, x2, x2, x1, x2, x2, etc. And I am writing down explicitly listing what are the transmissions that are required. As you can clearly observe, in the second case, the worst case rate will be only 1 by 2. And in the first case, the worst case rate will become 1. In fact, it will be becoming 1 for 2 cases, and it will be 1 by 2 for other cases. So even if you go for an average metric, average rate metric, clearly the second case will perform better than the first case. So that is the advantage, or this is a very simple example to illustrate the advantage of caching. Now, yes, it looks like a toy example. Will it be able to scale? That is the question that people would like to know. Will you be able to serve? Okay, it looks very simple. You are taking a server, you are serving two users. That is not a real life scenario. Okay, you will have a server with 1,000 files. You will have it will be connected to users with maybe 500 users, or maybe in an institute it will be connected to 2,000 users, like that. So whether it will be able to scale, or whether this can be generally extended. So those are the things that is challenging, and those have been addressed in the paper. So let us see how they go about it. So one thing is that one thing that you can observe is that as your file size increases, as your cache memory size increases, you can store more contents in your cache. So your rate will essentially go down. That is a common observation. One more simple observation that you can make is if your cache size is so large that you can support all the files, that essentially what I am saying is you can store all the files in your phone itself, then there is no point in the server transmitting anything. So the rate will go down to 0 for m being equal to n. So here the cache size is same as the number of files. And when m is equal to 0, the worst case demands is that all the files are demanded. In that case, there is no cache, so the server has to transmit at a rate of n. So these are 2 points that we already know in this rate memory graph. So there is a rate memory graph. So what we saw in this first half an hour of the talk is that for m equal to 1, you will be able to get a rate of 1/2. Okay. Whereas in the earlier conventional case, the rate memory graph was just a straight line between 2 and 2, which was the earlier conventional case. But by using this approach, you are going to get a reduction from this 1 to 1/2. So this is scheme 1 is the proposed scheme in that by Mada, Ali and Neeson, and scheme 2 is the classical conventional scheme. So again, this is something that I have been stressing in the beginning of the talk. So in conventional schemes, you are essentially caching the same contents or same portion at different locations, different caches. Now, what the server will transmit is it will transmit only 1/m/n. So here it is a more general case. I'm trying to explain how the general things work. So if there is m/n portion of the file will be available at each of the cache, only the remaining things needs to be transmitted. So 1 minus m/n will need to be transmitted, and this needs to be transmitted to k users. So the total worst case rate will be k into 1 minus m/n. So this is how you get this one value for the scheme 2. Whereas for the new coded caching, the proposed scheme, the important thing is that you do not cache the same thing at different users. Again, the observation that you have to make is m/n is available at each of the users. So m/n portion of each file is available at users. So inherently you will get a gain of 1 minus m/n. But in addition to that, because the cache contents are different and because how you arrange these cache contents, you will be able to get a global caching gain. So the global caching gain parameter and the equation comes to this particular formula, k into 1 minus m/n, which was the original, which was supported by conventional schemes, and then by a division of factor 1 plus km/n. So this is the worst case rate that was derived in the paper. Again, look that this is now not a toy example. This particular example that I showed you is one simple case, but that can be generalized to any k and any n. Obviously, that generalization is the tricky part. I showed you how or what is being done. You're actually storing different contents, and then you are using multicasting opportunities by storing suitably, so that you can get a reduction in the transmission rate. And that reduction in the transmission rate, how much reduction that you are obtaining, that is clearly quantified by this quantity, 1 plus km/n, by a division by 1 plus km/n. So if you substitute k equal to 2 and m equal to 1, you will get this 1/2 formula. So I'm not explicitly telling how this particular formula is derived. So that is it is not really involved, but the idea is behind this is what I explained. Yeah, so it's a good thing if you can go ahead and look it up in the paper and understand how this derivation happens. It is not a big derivation, but yeah, it needs more close attention to see how it is going, getting there. What is interesting is this quantity 1 plus km by n. So 1 plus km by n, we know that 1 plus km by n will be greater than 1 because it is a 1 km and n are all integers. So 1 plus km by n is greater than 1. So your worst case rate is going to become k into 1 minus m by n divide by a quantity that is greater than 1. So clearly the worst case rate will decrease. Now what is most interesting is that 1 plus km by n, let us observe that quantity. As k increases, this 1 plus km by n will increase. As m increases, it will increase. That is a fairly good assumption because you know if the cache size increase, you are able to perform better. But what is most important is that if k also increases, you will be able to perform better. So that is one major advantage of this scheme. As the number of users increase, you will actually end up performing better and better. Okay, so that is the km. And this km is the total cache content in the system. So if you remember, each user had a size of m. So k into m is the total amount of cache. And this is why this particular factor is called as the global caching gain. Okay, so you are able to get a gain by using other people's cache. And that is what it makes much more interesting and non-trivial. Yeah. So if there are any questions, I think now is a good time to ask. I have just explained the gist of one scheme. We will go ahead and see 2 more schemes in this talk and then put possible extensions. So I can pause for maybe 1 minute and take some questions. Yeah, it's fine. I think it is a very fairly simple topic so far. So if you are clearly understanding everything, I will take it as a positive response also. Okay, so then shall we continue? So what I would like to specifically focus now is the second approach. The second approach is decentralized one. So here in this first approach, the server was explicitly able to tell the caches, okay, you have to store this file, you have to store this portion of file. That is good, but that may not be practical in all these scenarios. It is difficult also. Another thing is that this k is equal to 2. That is also a factor that may not be known to the server. Okay, so if it is known to the server, what can be done? That is another question that we have to tackle. Yeah. So let us look at another example. So here also we are going with toy examples and trying to understand what is really happening. So here you have x1 and x2, again 2 files only. There are 2 users also, but the catch is that you are now going to use, you are now going to place or you're now going to cache randomly. So if the cache size is m, okay, what you will do is you will take m by 2 bits of each file. So here there are 2 files. So any mf by 2, in fact, general expression is mf by n. So here you are going to take any mf by 2 bits. One any mf by 2 bits of x2 and 1 will be total number of mf bits in cache 1. Similarly, you'll pick a random amount of mf by 2 bits in cache and put of x1 and put it in cache 2, and you'll put a random amount of mf by 2 bits in x2 and put it in cache 2. So it is slightly tricky. Now you are going to put randomly. So how we can get a handle on what is being stored? So to get a handle on what is being stored, I will make use of one new notation that is called as XIS. So XIS means the portion of file xi which is stored in caches belonging to the set S. So let us see how this terminology works. So this is the terminology. So if you look at that, S is S is a subset of caches. So S, there are two caches, 1 and 2. So S can take different values. What are those values? It can be 5, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 1 and 2. Okay, it can be 5, it can be 1. 5 is the null set. It can be 5, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 1 and 2. Now what I am saying is that those files which are stored in caches belonging to S, that I am calling as XIS. So what does this notation X11 means? X11 means that portion of file X1 which is stored in cache 1. X112 means that portion of file which is stored in cache 1 and 2. So not that in cache 1 what all things will be there. It will have XIS where 1 belongs to S. So all the subscripts will contain 1 if that file is to be located in cache 1. So this is kind of how you randomly prefetch, and then you are just labeling the files, okay, to get a handle on like what files went which were. So we are just effectively labeling it. Okay, that is it is a slightly what you call tricky way of labeling, so that we'll get a handling on the files that are being stored or the number of bits that are being stored. So similarly, if you observe the cache 2, the files will contain those parts in which 2 will be definitely belonging to this subset. So that is how this is being filled. So what we want is to get an idea or get a hold of what is the size of X11, what is the size of X12, etc. See, because now we are just labeling. Labeling is not enough. We need to know what is the actual size, then only we'll be able to get a handle on how much amount of data you need to transmit, how much is the rate, how much is the cache content that is being stored, etc. So let us take a look at what will aid us in finding a measure on what is the cardinality of XIS. So what do I mean by cardinality of XIS? Cardinality means the number of bits in XIS. So here we will make a small assumption that it is something that I have already stated. We will make an assumption that F is considerably large. So when F becomes large enough, okay, F is the number of bits. When F becomes large enough, you can actually use weak law of large numbers, and we can get an idea about what is the size of each of these files. So since we are randomly sampling, we can show that each of this XIS will have approximately this much number of size, that is m by 2 to the power cardinality of S into 1 minus m by 2 to the power cardinality of 2 minus S into F. Sorry, 2 minus cardinality of S into F. So this is from weak law of large numbers, but this will work only for F being large. But yeah, in our case, we are looking at F sufficiently large, so this is a safe assumption to have. So now again the question comes back, oh, we did the splitting,
Sir,
we did everything. Yeah.
Sir, I'm having one doubt.
Sure,
Like you said that like X 1 of 1 is like the portion of X which is available in 1, and X 1 comma 2 is like the portion of X available both in 1 and 2. Am I right, sir?
Yes, correct.
So previously you told us that while these are the portions available in both caches, so while we are transmitting, we will be if the user is in need of X1 means X will be having the two portions, and we will be combining using XR operation, and we will be sending the broadcast information to both caches. And
So
we will be doing some decoding operation here, and we will do all those things, right?
I
We'll get the
agree.
data back. Yeah. So my question is like, why do we need a handle in the such cases? What is the need of that handle you are talking about? Why we have to mention that the portion available in 1 and portion available in 2? If you are going to subtract or otherwise, if you are going to remove the data which is available already there, and we get the data which is not available
Okay,
by
so let
using
me
the
answer the question. Yeah, I got your question. Okay.
uh,
So earlier you had a control on what is getting filled up. Okay, so there was no chance. You could have very well designed this filling up also, so that there is no chance of overlap, etc. Now in the second scheme, which is called as a decentralized scheme, so I think that is the portion where you missed. I switched from the centralized scheme to a decentralized scheme. So in the decentralized scheme, I am giving the users the permission to cache anything randomly. So I do not have any control on what is getting placed. So I cannot exactly say, okay, this portion, this file cannot go there and sit in the other cache. So there will be some overlap in the caches also.
okay.
You understand my point? Now to
Yes, sir.
capture
Yes, sir.
that overlap, I am giving a new notation so that it is a tricky, it is nothing new. It is, see, there will be an overlap. Now I am to get a handle on the amount of overlap, to get a handle on what is getting overlap, I am introducing a new notation. That's all. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So
Sir. Thank you.
this is a new case. This is a new scenario. What was done earlier was called a centralized prefetching, which is a very, very sophisticated case. You get a clear-cut handle, and you will see that this is not so sophisticated. So obviously you are going to lose out. But what is the advantage? Here the central server does not have any need not control what is going to be placed here and there. It need not do. It is just telling you go and randomly cache. I will still show you some gains. So that is what we are going to see. Okay. Thank you. Good question. Thank you for the question. So I hope that clarifies that. So under this setting, let us see how you can deliver. So you have, let us consider this demand x1 and x2. Okay, so now I have x11, I have x112. So what I need is x15 and x12. Okay, these are the two x15, x12. And in the second case, what I need is x25 and x21. Okay. So if you observe x12 is there here and x21 is there here. So I can do one XOR operation, whereas the two bits, that is x15 and x25, I cannot do any XORing and I have to transmit it directly. So essentially that is what the server does. This x15, x25, there is no chance of any overlap or any coding that can be done. But when I want to deliver x12 and x21, I can multicast it together and deliver it in one shot. So there is some amount of gain that you can obtain. Okay. Earlier it was very well designed in such a way that you could have done in every transmission, whatever be the demand, I could have escaped. I could have used multicasting opportunity. But here I will not be able to do that. But there are some instances where the multicasting opportunity will help me and I can do that in that particular instance. Yeah, so that is the difference between these two schemes. So, and this is highlighted by this graph. So if you look at this graph, this is the current, this particular graph, the top portion is the decentralized version that we have just obtained. And this was the one that was earlier obtained, but that was a centralized. So as you can clearly see, when you're going from a centralized to a decentralized decentralized setting, you're losing some amount of rate. Okay, it is not like you're gaining everything, because obviously you are sacrificing, you are not doing a clear-cut placement. Another way to think of the same thing is that centralized is a very general case, okay, or not, I mean, it is a very crude way. Decentralized, anything that you can achieve by using decentralized, that you can achieve by using centralized, because decentralized is one sort of prefetching or one sort of placement. Okay, centralized can easily match that, because whatever you do in decentralized, the central server can tell, okay, you do like that, because in centralized you have more control. So when you go for a centralized setting, you will have a better advantage as shown in this figure, because your rate will reduce. Okay, so the server need not deliver in so much rate. But yeah, when you go for a decentralized setting, your rate will take a hit, but still it will perform better than the conventional caching things. So let us take a slightly quicker look at how I obtained this graph. So in general, what happens is that I will introduce one more notation, VKS. VKS means the file that is demanded by the kth user. So it is some another renaming of the files that is available at the cache sets. So what we do is take any subset S and we will make a transmission like this, VKS minus K. So this particular S minus K here is the most interesting thing. So essentially in this transmission, what we are doing is I am transmitting a XOR of a collection of files, out of which only one file is unknown to me and remaining everything is known to me. So that is a strategy here. I will look at my cache contents and I will look at what to transmit, and what I am effectively transmitting in every transmission, it will contain only one file that is unknown to me, XORed with maybe some K number of files which are known to me. So the advantage is that I will be able to decode that one particular file. At the same time, this will be able to deliver to a large number of users, K users. The best way to understand how this is working is take a piece of paper and write down yourself what is actually being transmitted. So this is what you will get for n equal to 2 and k equal to 2. So when I interact with my students also, what I do is I ask them to first understand this example. Then I will increase the size of the example to n equal to 3, k equal to 3. and maybe with different M's. And then what I do, I will tell them is that, okay, now you are in a position to understand what is clearly happening. Let us derive the result for general N, general K, and general M. So I think this is one way of doing research. So you understand things in a slow way, and then you can put in your effort and get the general expression derived. So you need to work it out. But this is the scheme. The scheme and the essence of the idea is that in every transmission, you'll be able to get at least one unknown portion. At the same time, you'll be able to deliver it to multiple users. So if I substitute S is equal to 1, 2, I will get exactly what this x1 2 XOR x2 1, which was the transmission we saw in this this particular slide, x1 2 XOR x2 1. So now the question is, we know the transmissions, but how do we get an handle on the rate? Because this plot, if you see, it is a rate versus M plot. So we need to get a handle on the rate. So how will we compute the rate? Again, we will use weak law of large numbers here. So what I can claim is that this VKS S minus K, if you look at VKS, it is a file demanded by the kth user. It is available exclusively at the set of caches S. So what is the probability that a particular portion of file gets cached in a particular set S? That will be M by N. So what we can do is, by using weak law, we will be able to find what is the total amount of file size that will get cached there. We will get a handle on the probability, and then you can use weak law of large numbers to get, actually there should be F here. Okay, I missed an F, so that F is missing. So there should be an F also. That multiplication will come when you do the weak law. This is just the probability that I am computing. So this is like M by N portion gets cached in, so S minus 1 files, and one remaining does not get cached. So that will give you the idea. Okay, let me just rephrase my words once more, because I think some confusion can arise. So here I'm using one more notation to use S to denote the size of S. So this S minus K, the size will be S minus 1. So you want some content to be stored in S minus 1 caches, and it should not be stored in K minus S plus 1. That is the remaining number of caches. So that is essentially the probability of doing that is what I have computed here. And if F is large, you can approximate it this to a multiplication with F and get the result. Yeah, so I missed an F here, so please note that. Okay, when I send the slides, I will edit it and send. Maybe I'll just take a quick note at the last slide 31. Okay, sorry about that. So this has to be done for all possible subsets. Okay, so once you do that, you have to, so for every possible subset, you have to do this, and then you have to sum it up so that you will get all the possible rates. And this is the expression for the rate that you can derive. So this is maybe it is not difficult. Okay, just a little bit combinatorics is there, but you can get this result. But what is again interesting is the first part of this. So K into 1 minus M by N, that was the gain that was obtained by using conventional schemes. And then the remaining multiplication is something that is the new thing that is coming. If you look at the remaining multiplication, the second term is 1 minus something. Okay, 1 minus something. So 1 minus something will be a factor which is less than 1. So you're multiplying by a factor that is less than 1. So your rate will reduce. And again, you're multiplying by N by Km. So this Km is a factor that depends upon the global caching gain, as we mentioned earlier. So you are getting a reduction. As K increases also, you will perform much better. And therefore, this scheme also scales very well with K, and that is its advantage. So this will perform better than conventional schemes. This is a function of dependent on Km, and that will give you some advantage. So that will give you the total cache content, and it is beneficial in that regard. Now I have been telling multiple times that this is performing better. Okay, so let us see how it is performing better. So here is something rather than not for the toy example, I have plotted for 20. Okay, so here there is 20 file, 20 users. So now you can see that if it was the original case, it would be a straight line between 20 to 20. Okay, but now if you see the decentralized and centralized, it is actually very, very rapidly reducing. For example, if you look at M equal to 4, okay, earlier you had to transmit nearly 16 F bits. That is like, let us think F is 1 GB, you have to transmit 16 GB. But now with these schemes, you will be able to do it in 2.5 GB. So that much reduction is there when you are able to do this caching. So this graph particularly highlights, this is for 20 files and 20 users. But if you go to 100 users and 100 files, this will be even more sharper. Okay, it will be vertically almost coming down, falling very, very quickly. So as the number of users or the number of files, etc. increases, this scales much better. So that is the advantage of this particular scheme. So I hope I have motivated you a little bit about why we need caching. If you're not convinced, this is a good graph to make yourself convinced that, okay, we need to go and get this technology in. There are some limitations. We will see why it is not yet practically rolled out, but it is being practically realized in there are particular universities, they have shown in laboratory settings how this can be done. So that is there. Some interesting works are there. So right now is a good time to just pause and ask whether there are any questions.
Yes, participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask directly. Or you can type also. You can type your questions in the chat box.
Okay, fine. So yeah, anything that comes up, please feel free to ask. So let's continue. So far I have been telling, okay, this works better, etc. Okay, but we are engineers, so we want to quantify how much it works better. Okay, so that is there. Okay, it is not correct. Okay, I keep on telling it works better, etc. But we have to quantify how much it works better. Okay, so how best you can do, that is something that information theory people or coding people will try and answer. Okay, that is also another thing, that is our trademark things. Okay, how best you can do and how much we are doing. So these are the two things that we traditionally answer. So what do you need for that? What we need for that is a lower bound. Okay, we want to get or develop a lower bound which will actually give you, okay, this is the best that you can go. Okay, and then obviously our challenge is to make this lower bound and upper bound meets. So if you are a communication engineer or if you're an information engineer, you know that this is what we normally do. Okay, we design achievable things and we find upper and lower bounds for that, and we try and analyze, keep on pushing so that these things meet. So that is our target. Sometimes we achieve that, sometimes we do not achieve that, but then when we do not achieve that, at least we know, okay, this is where we are, or this is how far we are from. So those things are needed. So what we would like to see now is how to get a handle on a lower bound for this. So this also was implemented and this also was developed by Madali and Neeson in their classic paper. So, but this is a little bit old lower bound, but the technique is used is very, very subtle and very interesting. Now new lower bounds are there in the literature, and yeah, that is better lower bounds are also there. They are slightly involved, but I will present you the simplest and easiest lower bound, which I think all of us can appreciate. So this is
Dr. Anu, sorry to interrupt. There is one question. From Vijay Selvan. So the question is, reducing rate is better for a good scheme? I mean, question is, I mean, low rate is desirable or like high rate? What is the aim of caching networks? So are you able to see the chat box? Or otherwise I can tell, yeah. I mean, the question is about the rate, whether it's reducing the rate is better for a good scheme, or like what is the aim of caching networks?
Okay, thank you, Vijay Shalvan, for the question. Yeah, so yeah, our target is to reduce the delivery rate. So what do I mean by delivery rate? So this is something that initially when you are working in this field, you might get confused, because when you look at communication networks, what we want to is to have networks that support high rate. No, that is our interesting. That is the same thing. But what we mean by the rate here is the rate at which the user has to, or the server has to deliver. Okay, so for example, what we are thinking is, suppose I demand a movie, can the server support me with this much data rate? Okay, with this much data rate, can my demand be delivered? So that is what we are targeting. So that rate, how much we should try and bring it down. Okay, so the aim of caching networks is to actually lower the rate that the server has to transmit. Okay, so that is, I agree with you. It's a potential area of confusion, because all our communication, we try to develop schemes which have good rate. Yeah, but here the definition of rate is the rate that the server has to, or the communication system has to support, so that the system is delivering the demands to the user. So here we are trying to look at a reduction in the delivery rate. Maybe that is a better terminology. Yes. So here's a good point. Decentralized has a higher rate than conventional. Not conventional. It is a centralized version. So conventional maybe. So conventional is a straight line between 2 and 2. So that will still lie down to the graph. This the lower graph is called a centralized. That is a scheme that we learned in the first half an hour. In the second half an hour, we looked at decentralized setting. So the advantage of decentralized setting is that you really are not micromanaging, and not micromanaging has its own advantages, because I really do not need to know all the specific details of the network to do a decentralized setting. Whereas to do a centralized setting at all its glory and get all the things, I need to do a lot of micromanagement. So decentralized has its own advantage compared to centralized. Not that even though decentralized is performing worse than the centralized case, which is an expected result, it is still performing better than conventional. The conventional is just a straight line between 2 and 2 in this case. If it is not highlighted in this graph, I think you will appreciate it much better in this graph, where the conventional is a straight line between 20 and 20, and your graphs are falling very, very rapidly. I hope I have answered that question, Vijay Shalvan. Okay, anyway, thank you. Nice questions. It is good to have a clarity. Whatever we learn, it is good to learn it clearly so that you can present it and you can go and read. So my motivation and my introduction here is to get you an introduction into storage networks, etc., and you can go and take a look at it and maybe go ahead with it. Okay, thank you, Vijay. So let me continue. So now we are looking at a lower bound. I told this is also that is something required, because as engineers we need to quantify information. So let me quickly tell you what is called as a cut set bound. So this was again developed by Mada Ali and Neeson. So here again the setting is same. So we are again going back to our toy example just to understand the cut set bound. So typically a cut is something between the is a cut as a part of a network. You can define it as a part of the network. Not part of the network. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Yeah. So cut is something that you draw an imaginary line which will separate the source from the sink. So here the source is where the information lies. So here you have actually two sources of information. One is the actual cache content, and the second is the server. Okay, and the second is the sink. Sink means the users. So I can draw a cut between two users. So this dotted line is a cut between the users, its cache contents, and the server. So if you're familiar with a little bit cut set theory and all, so what it says is that what do I need? What do the users need? The users essentially need x1 and x2. So it needs 2f number of bits. Okay, so size of the demanded files is 2f. Now this 2f number of bits, how will the user get 2f number of bits? It will get 2f number of bits from its cache. So how much cache content it has? It has 2 into mf. So each cache is mf size. So it has 2 into mf cache contents. And then whatever the server transmits. So what is the server transmission? Server will transmit right into f. So server will transmit right into f. Now what is the necessary condition? The necessary condition is that from this available content I should be able to get 2f. So I can clearly say that this RF plus 2mf must be greater than 2f. So I have access to only RF plus 2mf bits. So this RF plus 2mf must be greater than or equal to 2f. So that is a very simple cut set bound. Therefore R must be greater than or equal to 2 minus 2f. Okay, so it's a very simple idea. You have a cut. I'm looking at what is the amount of bits that is coming into that cut, and what is the demand that I have to decode. I have to decode 2 into f, and what is coming into me is 2mf plus RF. So RF plus 2mf must be greater than or equal to 2f. I can do one more thing. I can look at a cut at a particular source alone. So a particular sink alone. So I'm taking one sink, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it at two instances. So at one instance I am demanding x1, and in the second instance I am demanding x2. So there are two instances here, x1 and x2. So that is why this is slightly overlapping way I have drawn. So think of it as two instances. So in the first instance I am demanding x1. In the second instance I am demanding x2. Now what all things this particular user has access to. This particular user or this particular cut has access to only mf number of caches. At the same time, it needs 2 times f bits because now I'm looking at 2 instances. And what is the number of transmissions? Again, because I'm looking at 2 instances, the number of transmissions will be 2 times RF. So now what will be the relation? 2 times RF plus MF must be greater than or equal to 2 MF. So I will get one more relationship. Okay. So I can draw another cut for this X2 also and then get the same relationship. Actually, I'll get the same relationship. But if there were 3 users, I can draw another cut for maybe say first 2 users and alienate only 1 user. I can do many things like that. But for this toy example, these are the 2 cuts that I will have. What is the advantage? So let us go ahead and plot these 2 equations, that is R greater than 2 minus 2m and R greater than 1 minus m2 greater than or equal to. So here is the plot. So I don't quickly remember which one is which. I should have labeled that, but still this is one lower bound and this is one lower bound, and this was the scheme that we derived. So what we can tell, what we can clearly tell is that, okay, between 1 and 2, we are indeed performing optimal. You cannot do better than that. You cannot do better than that between 1 and 2. However, between m equal to 1 and m equal to 2, between m equal to 1 and m equal to 0, we have a lower bound here, and we have this as the achievable rate, and there is a gap. So there is something that we can possibly go ahead and do it, and people have done that also in the last few years. I will show one scheme I have. If time permits, I will show it. So this is the lower bound, very simple design lower bound. In fact, a general version of the lower bound is also very easy. You consider S number of users. So I consider it as explicitly either 2 or 1. In general, you can consider S number of users. So the total cache size this S users has access to is S into MF. Total number of files is N. Okay. So since I have S users connected and I look at different instances, I can look at N by S different instances, N by S different delivery schemes, so that all the demands are exhausted. So this N by S into R will come, that much number of RF number of bits can be delivered. So N by S into RF plus S into MF must be greater than or equal to, essentially this will be S into N by S into F. Don't worry about this ceiling and all. This is just yeah, you have to worry when you are writing a paper, but to understand it, it is just for mathematical rigorousness that floor function is put. Otherwise, whatever we conveyed earlier, that is the idea that is happening. So from this, I can rearrange and get a lower bound on R. So R will be greater than or equal to S minus Sm by N by S floor. And this is valid for any possible S. So you draw it for different S and take the best cases for different values of S. So this is what we draw here. For example, for different values of S, we have these 2 graphs, and obviously it has to satisfy all these conditions. You cannot skip all these conditions. All these inequalities needs to be satisfied. So we take the highest point in each case and then draw that. So this is the lower bound that we are obtaining using cut set bound. So even though maybe this part was slightly not explicitly clear, but I hope that I have conveyed the essence of the idea how the cut set bound is working. It is something very simple and very useful also, because we can get a very quick handle on how our schemes are performing. Yeah. So we have a lower bound, we have an upper bound. As we can observe, there's a clear gap between upper and lower bound. So what is the challenge? We should improve both the bounds. Okay, we should not focus on one bound, or we should not look at only one bound. There's a possibility that both the bounds can be increased. So there can be better achievable schemes. There can be better lower bounds. Okay, this is all shown to be there. Okay, so the better achievable schemes, I would just want to focus. So better achievable schemes, there is one technique called a coded placement technique. So earlier, if you are looking at so far, whatever we discussed so far, we were placing things in the cache without doing any encoding. Now what we can do is we can actually put data into the cache after encoding. Okay, so after some minor coding, we can actually load the cache, and then what we can see is that we will be able to perform better in terms of delivery rate. So here is that coded scheme. So it's again a very simple example. So, but the example I have taken n equal to k equal to 3 and m equal to 1 by 3. So this is this particular scheme that I'm explaining will work only for m equal to 1 by k. it will not work for any other values. So explicitly we are lowering only, we are focusing on one particular point in the graph, and then we are trying to see how we can improve that particular point. So what we consider is again a simple example with n equal to 3 users, 3 files. Here I have labeled the files as 1, 2 and 3. But what is the main difference is that I am splitting the files into 3, x11, x21, x31, x12, x22 and x32, x13, x23 and x33. Each file is split into 3. But what is important is what I put in the cache. What I put in the cache is now some XORed version of the files. Okay. So there is an XORed version of x11, XOR x21, XOR x31 that is being stored in the cache. Similarly, in all the caches, I am loading after doing one possible encoding. So let us see how this will aid us. So let us look at this particular scenario. This is one arbitrary scenario where I am demanding x1, x2, x3. What I do is I will just do these transmissions. So these are the transmissions that I make. In fact, I do transmissions in a very naive way. I just transmit without doing any coding. Sorry, without doing any coding here. X21, X31, X12, X32, X13, X23. This I am transmitting directly. So let us see this particular user. What it wants? It wants X12, it wants X13. So those things are directly available, X12 and X13. And X21 and X31 are also directly available. So that it will use along with this particular function to decode X11, and its demand will get served. So similarly, you can see that every demand will get served. What is most interesting is that what is the rate that we are using here? The rate that we are using is there are 6 packets, 6 files, 6 maybe transmissions. Each transmission is of size f by 3. Remember that you divided x1 into 3 parts, x2 into 3 parts, x3 into 3 parts. So you divided 6 parts by 3, so you will get a transmission of 2. Now what we earlier had with all the schemes before without using coding was 2.33. So you are getting a benefit of 0.33 times f. Again, I'm telling 0.33 times f. It might look trivial, but yeah, a 0.33 times f is not trivial when you look at f being large enough. So this is the earlier graph, okay, that we had obtained using centralized prefetching. This graph, how I obtained, I have not discussed, but this is the graph using centralized prefetching, and this is the new point that you are obtaining. So once you obtain this new point, now this entire graph will come down to become like this. Okay, so you are getting a reduction in the rate at this particular point, and this particular point, if you look at this r equal to 2, you can show by using cut-set bound, you can show that this is an optimal point. If you look at this line that I have drawn here, it is matching. See, if you look at this line that I have drawn here, this is the cut-set bound for that particular case. It is actually matching with this point. So this particular scheme is also optimal. Okay, and this came in a paper in 2016 where you can use coding techniques. So I'm not going into the details of how this techniques is being done, but you can take a look at this particular paper. In fact, a lot of work has since been. So these were the people who first showed that using coded placement you can perform better. In fact, a lot of work has come about after this in this particular using an extension of this technique where you use actual like a mix of data. I think IIT Guwahati also there are a lot of people, a lot of work has been done where they use multiple schemes to. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. So in many research has come from India itself, that where we actually mix these points, like we use both the kinds of techniques, both coded and uncoded data, and then we are able to show a lot of improvement. And yeah, many recent we are actually meeting the bounds also. So this was the starting point, but now yeah, if you ask me, this n equal to 2 case, k equal to 2 case is completely solved, and other cases are also getting solved now. But the general, there is still some gap. Symmetric batch prefetching, that is centralized prefetching, that has shown to be information theoretically optimal also. So you cannot do better, you cannot devise a better scheme without going for coded prefetching. So that has also been shown.
Dr. Anup, you are muted. Suddenly you got muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, also I think there is one question from Anna Thomas. So the question is, any probability-based learning methods to assign the cache data influence the performance? Like if you know that there is a very low probability that a user will demand a file, so that the file is not at all cached for a user, and high probability that another user will demand that, hence totally caching that file.
Yeah, I agree. These are interesting questions. I will answer Anna Thomas in like maybe 2 minutes. So I will answer your question. I have it in my slide as like what all things that we can do, what all things we should address. So please, in 2 minutes, I'll reach your question. So this is the scheme, and yeah. So what I just want to make the final comment is that this having a coded prefetching also aids you. In fact, that is the way to actually go and raise the information theoretic lower bounds. If you don't do coded prefetching, currently we have research techniques that will show you the best without any uncoded techniques. But with coded techniques, what is the best? It is still not known to the best of my knowledge. So let me give you one more setting quickly. So here is one shared setup. So this is a slightly different version of the problem. So I will not delve, I will just introduce the problem to you and then I will move on. So the problem here that I'm talking is that what happens if the caches are shared? So somebody also mentioned. So this is a little more practical setting. For example, you might, all of us I think are working in some institutes, so we will have different departments. So what can happen is that each department can have a particular cache, which can be like a pretty huge cache. And when you are in your quarters, you will register to one cache. When you are in your office, you will register to another cache, etc. So this is one scenario. So such setting is also there. That is called as a shared caching. So inside shared caching also there is a lot of work that is done to identify what is the rate region, what is the how much how best you can perform, all those things are there. So we have some results in that also, but I think I will not go into that due to time restrictions. But these are the two particular papers which if anybody is interested to know, one paper is written by me only and another paper is a very classic paper which came around in 2020. So these are like not so old things. These are still being done and still being considered, how to analyze these settings and all those things. So maybe I'll skip this small portion here, and what I would like to spend in the final maybe 10 minutes of this talk is to try and excite you or try and give you more information about what are these open things. One of them which clearly Miss Anna has already mentioned. So what Anna has asked is, what if you know about file popularity? So here is a clear-cut example, non-uniform file popularity. So there has been some work being done, non-uniform file popularities. So where you make an assumption that there is a probability on the file, and that probability there is a PDF, you know, and based on that PDF, how you can design the caches. Yes, there are some works, and it is an interesting potential direction. And recently, so this is sorry. Is my screen still visible? Can somebody confirm? I'm sorry. I think I did something here.
It is visible, but it's not in the full screen mode.
Okay, fine. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, now it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So what you asked is correct. If you know probability, definitely you can do performing better. If you know the prior information, you can design the caches appropriately so that you will get a better knowledge. But what is interesting in this, whatever we have discussed so far, is here we are assuming that there is no knowledge on the prior. So if you know that, you'll still be able to perform better. Okay, so that is the advantage. So whatever you design or you develop from out of these ideas, you will still be able to perform better. So this is sort of like you are looking at a very naive kind of scenario and showing that, okay, I have a lot of benefits even without knowing anything about the probability. So definitely, if the probability knowledge is there, I can incorporate that and perform better than this. So there is still a lot of things that is to be done in coded caching. This is again a lot of interesting things are there, but preliminary works are there in all these things that I have listed, but advanced works are still missing. So thank you for the question. Yeah, it can be done. Another thing that has been very recently, in fact, in this slide, I forgot to mention it now that you asked. So people have been using machine learning, especially reinforcement learning, etc., techniques to learn caching. So how to actually use machine learning techniques to first of all learn the prior information about the file popularities, and the second thing is there are I think in 2020 there was a work in which reinforcement learning is being used to actually learn or make the machine learn how to deliver the demands faster, and that has to be that is shown to be doing well. But definitely it is still not what we are showing is theoretical minimas and maximas. Yeah, but RL and all will reach that after suitable training, but there are still some gaps involved. But it will be far more easier to algorithm. We just need to train that, and it will automatically study. But that is interesting. I think one of the advantages as faculties, if I'm talking to faculties, is that many of the students who come to us for slide projects and all, they are all the students, BTech students particularly, they are very much interested in these new areas. And in communication also, this RL and machine learning and all these things are finding wide applications. And students are also interested. Yeah, so it happens everywhere. So these are potential things. In caching also, RL has been a very, recently it is being employed. But there are so many challenges also because the action space is very large and all. So another thing that is actually almost, if you look at whatever I have told, I have imposed many limitations. I assume that all M is same. Okay, it need not be true. M's need not be same. Okay, I can say I have a better phone or I have a better device. I can store maybe 2 GB, whereas you might be able to compromise only 512 MB. Somebody else might be wanting only 256 MB. So these things, it is not safe to assume that everybody has a unique size. So what you can say is that across all the users, maybe the application can demand, okay, while installation, I need this much space to go ahead. So that is one thing. Another interesting thing is this hierarchical caches, in which there are multiple layers of cache. For example, if you are working again in institutes, your school might have one bigger cache. I will have a personal setting, all those things. So that there are some preliminary works in that direction. A very, very interesting direction which has been recently a big focus is this multi-access. So multi-access means many people are able to access others' caches also. So it is like very, very what you call yeah, I mean, very relaxed setting where you can actually go ahead and access many caches. So this has been a particularly prominent focus in recent research. I think most of the papers that came in multi-access is in the last 2 to 3 years. From IIT Bombay, there are very good works there. And I think this online coded caching is like an extension to what Ms. Anna asked. So it is like online means you will be dynamically updating the files also. So that is a slightly trickier challenge. So here there are n files, obviously. For example, consider like you're using n movies. So Amazon might say that, okay, I have these movies in background, but after a certain point of time, maybe after like 1 week, nobody will be watching that. So maybe these are not the movies to focus. So he will reload this n files, and then you have to adjust the caches again. So how you can dynamically and spontaneously do that? So they have many techniques, like they will use a queue mechanisms, they will use other mechanisms, and these are also interesting directions. How much data you need to actually, what data you need to modify in your cache so that you will still be able to attain these goals. Yeah, Kun, I think I am almost done. But this is a very small slide, but this has very potential future directions. If anybody is interested in working or in these areas, you can contact me, and I will be able to guide you at least to the introductory papers in any of these directions. There are other directions also. So these are some things that I thought about it like in the last few days, and I just quickly put up a slide there. And questions are always welcome. Communications are always welcome. I think my email ID will be with Kuntal, and I don't have any problem in him sharing with you also. So with that, I think I will go to my last slide, and it's a thank you from my side. So, so thank you for having me here. Especially special thanks to Dr. Kuntal for inviting me to give me this talk.
Yeah, I hope thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anup, for such a nice presentation. Participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and directly ask, or you can type the questions. We'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes, Dr. Anup, for any
sure.
questions.
No problem. Yeah. So anyway, I think I'll send the slides to you. Then we can share it with them. No problem.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, from Vijay Selvan. So the error rate, please share it. So what's the exact question? Vijay, if you are there, you can ask.
Oh, there are some questions here. Error rate, place error rate. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that question. Maybe. Yeah, maybe one point about error, since he has asked this. So the assumption that I'm making in so far is that we are transmitting using an error-free link. Okay, but that need not be true in general. Okay, there can be some errors in transmission from the server. There can be some errors while placing the contents in the cache. So those things are not at all explored, and that is a potential future direction. We have some preliminary works in that direction, but it is not very easy to handle. You can always put an outer coding, use high rate LDPC or some good codes to ensure that there is no error. But that is not shown to be optimal. You can still do better, but yeah, that is tough actually.
Yes, dear participants, if do you have any other questions regarding this talk?
Okay, then thank you, Kundal. I think.
Yes, I assume that there are no questions from the audience. So let us thank Dr. Anup for such a nice interaction. So one question from Susmita.
Yes.
So do you like to answer it? So can we use D2D communication to reduce delay?
Yes.
So is it?
Yeah, it is possible. Obviously, if we can use that, that is another. It's a new world out there, but I have to develop so much to tell that answer. Yes, and the answer in one line is yes, but we need to do more to get a handle on that. Okay, thank you.
Sir, one question from. Is there any question? Okay, I think it's a noise. So okay. Thank you, Dr. Anup, once again. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody. Enjoy the sessions. Thank you.